Good afternoon and welcome to this afternoon's meeting of the Glenorchy Planning Authority for the 13th of October 2025. I would like to acknowledge the Muwinina people as the traditional owners of this land. We recognise all Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the original owners and continuing custodians of the land and waters of this island, the Twitter. We pay our respect to Aboriginal elders, past and present, and we commit to working for a city that welcomes and respects all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. My name is Sue Hickey and I'm the Mayor of Glenorchy and Chair of this afternoon's Planning Authority meeting. Joining me this afternoon are my fellow authority members, Deputy Mayor Alderman Russell Yaxley, Alderman Josh Cockshott, Alderman Stephen King, and Alderman Tim Marks, and we also have a number of council staff in attendance this afternoon. Before today's first item, I kindly ask anyone attending in person to please turn off their devices or put them into silent mode. Item 1 of the Planning Authority Declaration. The Glenorchy Planning Authority intends to act as a planning authority under the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993. The Planning Authority has full power to make planning decisions on behalf of the Council. And now we're going to the meeting procedures. The planning officers present assessments and recommendation and then answer any questions of elected members. Please note at this stage a decision has not been made on the application before us today. The chairperson invites the applicant and any interested parties to have their say by addressing the meeting, and speakers will be limited to 5 minutes. And then the third point is the chairperson may ask the planning officer to comment on any matters raised. And item 4 is the planning authority discusses the application. Item 5, the statutory planning applications. The planning authority decides the application and the senior statutory planner explains the appeal rights. Item 6, for planning scheme amendments, the strategic planner explains the decisions being made by the Planning Authority and the Tasmanian Planning Commission. And then we have some legal requirements. So when deciding an application, the authority is required by law to seek to further the sustainable development objectives of the Act, consider representations received during the public notification period, and make the decision by reference to the current planning scheme provisions. And the meeting rules are quite simply, please comply with any directions given by the chairperson, and please respect other people's views and their right to have a say. And now we'll go to item 2, apologies or leave of absence. There are none, which is great. Item 3, does anyone have a pecuniary interest? No. Item 4, confirmation of the minutes. Thank you, Alderman Marks. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Deputy. Any discussion on those?
No, that's true and correct.
Okay, you don't want to sum up then? No, so I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? The minutes are confirmed. Thank you. Now let me see where I'm up to. I will now ask Angela to address item 5, which is the proposed use and development of the combined planning scheme amendment 263, 271 and 293 Main Road, Austin's Ferry, and a planning permit application request for 271 and 273 Main Road, Austin's Ferry. And then it's PLAM 24/02.
Okay. So the first slide shows the site that we're talking about. On the left is an aerial photograph. Outlined in blue is the subject site. So it's 293 Main Road, 271 Main Road and 263 Main Road, 3 lots. To the north is a light industrial area, Whitestone Drive, which has a number of industrial uses. And to the southeast is a large lot of council land, which is currently split zoned. So the zoning is on the right-hand side. Move on to the next slide. So the proposal is for a change to the zoning of the land. Currently it's in the rural living A zone. That zone is generally intended to be applied in a rural setting where there are limited services or there are particular landscape or natural values that need to be protected, it only allows for a single dwelling to be developed on each lot. And the proposal is to change that to a general residential zone, which would match the zoning of the other residential properties fronting onto Main Road. And the other part of the amendment proposal is the application of a specific area plan. So the area included in the plan is part of the lots that are to be rezoned. Shown by that purple line is the southern boundary of the SAP area, and there are some specific planning controls that would apply in that area, which are oriented around mitigating industrial noise impacts and in sensitive users like dwellings to self-protect against noise impacts. It would also, sorry if I go back one, the SAP would also prohibit an extension of sensitive development for sensitive use on 293 Main Road, which is that the northernmost parcel. And the reason being that there's no feasible way to mitigate the noise impacts from the industrial area to that part of the land. The other two lots, there are mitigations that can be applied. And the key one is the construction of an acoustic fence along the boundary. Okay. And then on the next slide, the application is a combined application with a planning permit request for 42 multiple dwellings on the land at 271 Main Road. That's the central lot in the rezoning request. This whole proposal has come before the planning authority previously and was certified and prepared by the planning authority, but unfortunately rejected by the Tasmanian Planning Commission. So I'll go into some detail in the following slide on that, but the key point here is that there's no substantial change to the development that's being proposed now versus what was previously put forward and recommended for approval in the previous iteration. So the background, the reasons why the Planning Commission previously rejected the proposal were they were concerned about the impact of the industrial emissions on amenity. Lower SAP was previously proposed. The Commission was still querying the impact of emissions other than noise and had some additional questions about the noise impacts as well on residential amenity. They were concerned that that would result in a fettering of the industrial land, so additional restrictions in the ability to develop and use the industrial land in the north. And they also had questions around the strategic direction for council's adjoining land, that large parcel at 261 Main Road. So in the time since then, leading up to this proposal, the proponent has undertaken additional consultation with landowners and operators in that industrial area for Steel Line, AWC and the owner of the Downer site. The concerns that those stakeholders raised were around noise complaints or the potential for more noise complaints to come through, particularly around the potential for development at 293 Main Road. And the response was that the proposed controls would, as I just explained, would limit the ability to do any additional development on that northernmost lot where the noise can't be adequately mitigated. And for the other lots, the SAP includes controls to ensure that dwellings self-protect against noise to address those concerns. In terms of the strategic direction for council land, council has previously decided to investigate the options for that land, and some work has been undertaken to identify the constraints for the land. So some contamination issues were identified and have been addressed to the extent that they're able to be addressed. There are some geotechnical constraints on the land that mean that a large part of it will never be able to be developed on due to geotechnical instability. And then there's a relatively small area of potential heritage value that would be included in any future rezoning. So with all that in mind, I think there's a process to come in terms of coming back to council to initiate the process for determining whether to dispose of the land. The general strategic direction would be that the primary use would be residential and with open space on the area that's undevelopable. So that would be the general direction. So our view is that in that context, the land and its future direction isn't a constraint on the current proposal to rezone the adjoining land because it won't be used for an industrial purpose in any case. So our assessment of the proposed amendment is that it's supported. It will provide more substantial opportunity for more housing on existing serviced urban land in the urban growth boundary. The potential impacts of the amendment, again, are that because it adjoins industrial land, it could result in amenity impacts to dwellings and conversely constraints on the ability of the industrial users to operate, and that's what the SAP is proposed to resolve. We've assessed it against the statutory requirements. It meets all the local, regional and state strategy and policy requirements as detailed in the report. It meets the LPS criteria in the legislation and also the Section 8A guidelines, which is the Planning Commission's guidelines for the application of zones and codes. The development, so I'll just run through. I've already stated it's 42 multiple dwellings. I'll just run through the specific discretions. So just very briefly, the discretions aren't substantial. There's a couple in the zone. The setback discretion is really just about the acoustic fence. There's some privacy discretions and they're going to be resolved through screening and sill heights and opaque glazing, which is a fairly standard solution. There's discretion for the height of the frontage fence. That's enclosing private open space and is appropriate in this context. There's a couple of discretions under the new SAP, and that's just to do with the floor level. There's some dwellings that are proposed to be 2-storey, and that means it generates a discretion where we have to look at it from the noise assessment point of view. So there's an acoustic report that's been done that's assessed those dwellings and said yes, that they're going to achieve an appropriate internal sound level. And similarly for external second floor decks, they're going to be on the opposite side of the dwellings to the industrial area, so they're protected in that way. There's some discretions under the codes, one for motorcycle parking numbers and also traffic generation. They are both covered off under a traffic impact assessment that's said that they're not a problem. There's one for sensitive use within an attenuation area, and essentially all the measures required under the specific area plan also serve to address that particular criteria. And then buildings and works within a flood-prone hazard area, there's just a very small area of mapping overlay that the fence passes through, but our hydraulic engineers have confirmed that that's really just ponding and doesn't concern it. It doesn't sort of raise any risk concerns from a flooding perspective. So with all that in mind, the options for the GPA are to prepare the amendment and grant the planning permit, which is what we're recommending, or prepare the amendment and refuse the planning permit, or refuse the amendment, in which case the planning permit can't be considered. Assuming that the amendment is prepared, the next steps are to certify the amendment, notify the Commission, the Planning Commission, and then advertise. Once advertising is complete, there will be a report on any representations received, which would come back to the GPA, and then it will go to the Planning Commission for a decision with any hearings, which is pretty much exactly what I just said then. Yep. So our recommendation is that, and I presume you don't want me to read these in full, but we recommend approval of the amendment request and approval of the planning permit application with recommended conditions.
Okay. Thank you, Angela. Now I'm going to call for questions from the authority members for the planning officer. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Matt, through you. Just a question around the 293 main road, where we're changing the zoning to general residential, but there's probably no chance that there will be general residential on there.
Yes.
What was the thought around that?
It's really just for mapping consistency. Generally, it's not considered orderly planning if you leave one site in a misaligned zone. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And things have changed, so new technologies and all that sort of stuff too. Yeah. And just regarding the SAP, does the SAP include those? I just mentioned up there, the existing lots. So does that overlay the existing lots, or is it just for the site itself?
It's just for the site.
The new site.
Yeah, but so it's just for those 3 lots. And not the whole of the lots, but what is defined by that wiggly line is basically a noise contour. So that's where the noise goes up to 55 decibels per something, dBA, whatever that is. That's the extent to which the noise impacts need to be mitigated.
Okay, that's fine too.
Yeah.
No worries. No other questions. Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay.
Pretty straightforward.
Sorry?
Seems pretty straightforward.
Okay, and we acknowledge members of the gallery, noting the attendance of representatives and applicants in attendance, and invite them to address the meeting, but I believe we don't necessarily want to.
Just thank the officers for their thorough work on this one. We've spent a lot of time with Angela, Lyndall and Darshini working through the issues from the Commission's decisions last time, so we appreciate that. Just in relation to 293, it's probably worth saying there's an existing house sort of outside the wiggly line in the southern corner, so that's obviously a residential use. The SAP sets it up so you can actually extend that by 50%. It also allows for non-habitable buildings like garages and sheds and things to be built in the rest of the land. And then this southern corner, which is outside the SAP area, that is suitable for it's further enough away. So the residential does provide for an intensity of use on that site. It's just in the closest area, and I don't know whether you're familiar with the site, but it actually drops down really low. So it's the low part of the site adjacent to Andrew Waters, which is the problem bit. But otherwise, there's some capacity for further residential in the back corner, which is about, I think it's like 1,500 square metres. It looks small because we're looking at it, but if you compare it with the lots along the main road frontage, it is actually still quite a large area of land. Anyway, otherwise, we just hear if there are any questions that arise, but thank you.
Thank you, Fraser. Okay, so I also have Eddie Steenberger here. Do you have a question? Would you like to come to the table?
2 quick questions. I'm sure they won't be difficult. The first one is, did council actually consider rezoning to inner residential rather than general residential? If not, why not? And if you did, why not?
So, firstly, the proposal that was put to us was for rezoning to general residential rather than inner residential. If we can bring up the map showing the surrounding zoning, Inner residential is suitable where it's in very close proximity to services at activity centre generally, and well served by transport links. This area is reasonably well connected from a transport perspective, but it's not in close proximity to an activity centre, so it's not essentially within walking distance to a shopping centre or that kind of thing. That's where we generally apply inner residential. And as you can see, well, I don't know if you can interpret that. So the red on that map is general residential, so it would accord with the surrounding zoning. And then over to the left, so the west of the main road, there's also some low density residential land. So that just indicates it's more on the fringe of the suburban area, I guess, relatively speaking. There's also some sensitive environmental land nearby, although that's probably not close enough to warrant any concern. But that's essentially the context as to why we didn't look at inner residential in this case.
Okay, thank you. And the second question, I didn't quite understand how the boundary of the land covered by the SAP and the decibel, the dBAs, and how that works.
Yeah, so I haven't put an image up on the presentation, but it's derived from a noise assessment that was done that measured the noise levels on the subject land, and what that contour represents is the point at which the noise from the industrial area drops off, so you don't need to take any additional measures essentially to protect yourself.
Now, presumably that is based on the measurements of noise intensity at some particular point in time, because things will change. It may become louder, it may become quieter. How does that work?
Yeah, I might throw to our environmental health officer to talk about how a noise assessment works.
So they do modelling over a period of time. So yes, it's taken from a point in time that's taken as a representative sample. They base it on that, they model that.
And so that boundary is now fixed.
Based on the modelling,
Yes, based on. Okay, thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Thank you. Okay, so if that's the end of questions, I'm now going to ask for someone to move from our panel. Thank you, Alderman Marks. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Alderman Cockshutt. Would you like to open the debate, Alderman Marks?
Yes, I just had the whole weekend spending going through this, and I think it's a very, very good situation to be able to come today and hopefully approve this, because it's something that's we need in Glenorchy is more residential, and it's an area that's pretty much covered by residential area. Yes, there is some industrial, but as you say, you're going to mitigate that by a fence. So I don't see any issues with it as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman King.
Thank you, Chair. I see this as a solid proposal, and I look forward to going through. There's not a lot more to say, but I think our planners have done good work on it. I appreciate that. Thank you. And you guys have presented well, so let's just move forward.
Thank you. Alderman Cockshutt.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm fully supportive of the proposal. I think all the concerns and issues from the previous time have been addressed, and I think it works out well with our statement of commitment to housing. So all ticks from that perspective.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, yeah, certainly satisfied with the team's recommendations to amend the planning scheme. The applicants have addressed the concerns and taken on the feedback from the Tasmanian Planning Commission, which was the past application. So the new application is certainly precise in a lot of the detail and very well thought through. And yeah, like fellow elected members have mentioned, you know, having 42 more homes is an excellent excellent result. And it's pleasing to see that our statement on commitment, while we see them as words on a page, this is it in real life. So, you know, seeing it coming about where a planning scheme is, you know, some land has been not used or right in this current moment, you know, not the greatest piece of land to be able to be used in the zoning, being rezoned enables it to be used well. So I'm fully supportive of the recommendation.
Yes, and like my colleagues, I totally agree, and I think it's wonderful that there's been collaboration of effort to make sure that this school's going to pass the test, and that the end result is that 42 more families potentially will have a roof over their heads. So it's really good when there's obviously quite a lot of problems with the site, but they've been resolved in a very professional manner and made it a lot easier for the panel to come to this conclusion. There was certainly a significant amount of work that gone into it, so we appreciate that. So anyone else like to say anything else before we? No, you don't want to sum up all the remarks? No, thank you. So in that case, I'm putting the recommendation to the vote, and I'll invite the senior statutory planner after that to explain the process from here. So all those in favour, please raise your hand. Carried unanimously, which is a great sign of success. Thank you. And Angela, would you like to take over? Or Lyndall?
Maybe Lyndall can take over that.
I'll just really quickly summarise what Angela said before. So now that it's being prepared, the amendment needs to be certified, exhibited for 28 days. And then if we get any representations, we have to consider the merits of those representations, and that comes back to a future planning authority meeting. Then all those reports and documentation will go to the Tasmanian Planning Commission, who will then, again, do another assessment, give people who make the representation an opportunity to be heard and considered, and then they will make the decision.
Great, thank you. So that's the end of the matter for the moment. Thank you. Thank you to everyone in attendance. I hope you've enjoyed the discussion, and we look forward to seeing you at the next GPA meeting. Thank you.